and how we do the work that we do. We initially got funding from Chevron to do a lot of the work that we do here. We have been able to leverage that initial funding through other partnerships with donor agencies like USAID, GIZ, USAID, so that it's not only Chevron, but Chevron here is depicted as the initial funder for what we do. Our partner in the US is the Niger Delta Partnership Initiative, NDPI. And NDPI is our US-based strategic partner, and they are specifically focused on strategic planning, project funding, partnership development, and raising the international development community interest and support on poverty alleviation in the Niger Delta. In the US, especially also in the West, when they talk about the Niger Delta, they talk about two things: conflict and corruption. And for us with NDPI, we are trying to change that narrative. It's not, yes, there is conflict, yes, there is corruption, yes, there are major challenges in the region, but there are also opportunities. And so we try to leverage on those opportunities on the international scale so that investments coming in here can see the opportunities, can see where they can fit in, and we try to highlight those gaps. So the role that NDPI plays for PIN is critical in changing that global narrative of what the Niger Delta is. PIN then therefore is the implementing arm of NDPI in the region. So they do the overall strategic planning for us, and we basically implement a lot of the projects in the region. So about last year, I think sometime in August last year, PIN has been in the region for about 6 years now, and we wanted to understand the impact of our work to date. Not just specifically what PIN is doing, but really when we're talking about development, when we're talking about measuring impact, we really wanted to understand what the trends are, what it really means to develop, what it really means to do development in the region. So we had some key questions that we really wanted to answer. What constitutes sustainable impact? How should the definition of sustainable impact take into account human behavioral change? For us, at the end of the day, when people act differently and do differently, development for us is achieved. So it's not just how many buildings have been built, or how many schools have been built, or how many roads have been built. It's once people actually interpret the actual development changes that we're trying to do and behave and think differently, then there is sustainable development that can be sustained going forward. Everyone talks about sustaining development or sustainable development. In the Niger Delta, we haven't reached sustainable development yet, because the norms have not changed and behavior has not changed. So those intangible things, the things that you can't measure, that you can't track, that you can't see, are things that we are concerned about. Yes. So it's really about reorienting evaluations to capture and involving concepts of impact. How can evaluations capture progress achieved towards systemic change? How can evaluations take into account the complexity of different market systems, especially in the agricultural sector? How can the multiplier effect of development programs be measured? Next slide, please. So for us, before we even discussed or tried to think about measuring impact, we went to look about why is it so difficult to access the right kinds of data to begin with. You come to the Niger Delta, there's a lot of information about the Niger Delta, but it's scattered and it's not in one central place. It's not, and even when you do find it, oftentimes it's not accurate, it's out of date. So those challenges really impact the type of development that you can do in the region. Sorry, I have to go slowly on this. So the first challenge is absence of a baseline data. We have realized that a lot of development projects in the region give you data only after the project has finished. And that's the wrong way to think about development, or to think about the work that you're doing. You need to understand where the challenges are in the beginning and have some sort of baseline data, even if it's rough and even if it's not complete. But to have a sense of where you were in the beginning and how far you've gone from that is key. So lack of sense of baseline data is one of the key challenges. You need to pivot in the middle of your implementation activities that is not and the that you can't always count. So development has shifted, really looking at sort of root causes, the value add of services, and moving from the aid development for that. But with market systems comes an even more complex way of measuring approaches and measuring impact in conflict. Really count. When we're talking about change, we're trying to move from knowledge all the way down to social norms. Just before that is action, doing something different. So if you start from the knowledge side, it's awareness, knowledge, understanding of the context. We at Penn Foundation and at NDPI, when we're talking, especially when we're talking to an international audience or we're talking to potential investors, oftentimes, yes, they know about the Niger Delta, yes, they know about the region, yes, they know about the United States, but they really don't understand the complexities of what is actually happening. And so really creating awareness and knowledge for them so that they can then act is critical for us. And then changing the attitude, as I mentioned earlier, sort of a sense of empowerment, not just from investors or the stakeholders that we talk with, but also the beneficiaries that we are targeting our initiatives to. All the way to capacity, discourse, and as I mentioned at the end, action and social norms. So I wanted to just end with this this quote, which says, one-dimensional economic-centered definition of poverty fails to adequately address the concept of quality of life in all of its norms and forms, many of which are aspects that are intangible and immeasurable, but nonetheless exceedingly important to human life and development. So that's the sort of things that we are thinking about when we talk about our work in the region, is the intangible elements of development. So this graph is just sort of talks a little bit about the rate of adoption. So a lot of the initiatives, a lot of the pilots, a lot of the interventions that PIND and NDPI and then many of our partners are doing are new things in the region, things that haven't been done before, things that have a different strategy. Maybe it's the same overall objective in terms of ending poverty, in terms of increasing capacity of women in government, or whatever the case is. Those are the overall things. But the way we go about it sometimes is different. And so for us, the rate of adoption or the estimate of rate of adoption is important. So I'll talk a little bit about what each one of these means. You begin with the innovators when we're talking about new things. And these are typically individuals, organizations, hopefully government representatives who are the first to try that new innovation. They are typically adventurous, interested in new ideas, and very willing to take risk. One of the things that we've realized about the Niger Delta in particular is that it's very risk averse, especially when you connect and talk about investors coming in. They bring risk as one of the single factor for not coming into the region. And so it's very, very conservative. And so the early innovators are the ones who help change that narrative and who give comfort to investors to invest. You have the second group, which are your early adopters. And these are typically your opinion leaders, your allies, your ambassadors who embrace change opportunities. They may already be aware of the need to change and are comfortable with new ideas. At Penn, we're really just interested in getting to that 13.5%. Because once you get to that tipping point, the ball continues with or without you. Because people by then, with the early innovators and the early adopters, it will be able to move the needle in terms of what you're trying to do. There's really, after that, whatever you do really doesn't have any more impact. With the early majorities, the late majorities, and the laggers, people who wait to the very, very end to actually see. The laggers are folks who are bound by tradition, very conservative, very skeptical of change, and are usually the hardest group to bring on board. And so in our interventions, we don't really focus on them because they are, even though they're the last 13% of the equation. By the time it gets to them, the innovation, the change has already happened, and they're the last ones to sort of join on board. And I should have mentioned that in the beginning. Working with IGD, we do have an in-depth their work. To be in it for the long haul and realize that so having a really strong foundational set of networks is critical for any success to happen. Develop and support critical cross-sector relationships, partnerships, and alliances. And we echo a lot of local changing agents are your early adopters. These are your innovators. And so if they are the ones taking the risk on behalf of what you have told them to do, then they need to be supported. And supported can be in financial terms. Support can come in terms of giving them access to information. Support can come in creating a network for them to be safe to experiment and challenge one another. So the support it doesn't have to always be a financial, transactional relationship. It can also just be sort of a societal relationship as well. So as I mentioned earlier, commit to a sustainable and holistic market-led approach versus the aid model of development, which is basically doing whatever your donors or the grantees have indicated. And then the fifth and sixth one, embrace lean principles to diffuse innovation and possess a rare and strong organizational DNA. For us, thank you. For us, being able to, when I say us, NDP and PIN, to develop prototypes and test them over and over again. If you have an organization that is nimble, if you have an organization that is able to change focus in the middle of an implementation, you decided to go A, and there are too many challenges, or the context has changed, or maybe sometimes the political party has changed, and so you're not able to move or do whatever the initiative that you had desired. You need to be able to change in the middle of your program. And so, and only lean and innovative organizations can do that. If you have a bureaucratic organization, it's hard to change in the middle of an initiative. The DNA aspect is really having the right people at the table to help you do that. That's it. Thanks. So just very quickly, recommendations to increase impact for systemic change, intensify focus on developing an enabling environment, explore partnerships, especially around ICT, enhancing what sometimes is just not being reported accurately, or is not being reported at all. And so having a good relationship with media houses, print, radio, social media to help tell that story is critical. Bolster the demand for the value chain development by focusing on efforts on creating more linkages to market systems. Continue to explore opportunities to apply market-based approaches and increase access to finance across all agricultural value chains. In conclusion, achieving sustainable systemic change is a process, a really long process, and one that is not accomplished quickly, nor by one single institution or sector. It acquires knowledge, acknowledgement of the complexity involved in fundamentally changing human behavior and the fabric of a society. It requires a lot of time and a sustained commitment and investment to establish and maintain trust and credibility among a large group of stakeholders. That's it. Okay. I think that's it. I think the last slide here just talks about the lessons learned. I would just highlight the last point, which is contribute more than money. A lot of times when you're talking about development initiatives, that's usually the first question, and sometimes the last question is how much is this going to cost, or how much are you going to pay me to do this? And development for us is more than just money. So as the managing director mentioned in her presentation, you have to be willing to come to the table with what you are going to offer to change that equation. It can't always just be waiting for handouts or the rent sinking that the region is known for. Putting your own stake in the game gives you a sense of entitlement and empowerment into the discussions. And so it's not always about money for us, but really working on collaboratively with key partners for change. Thank you so much for giving me the time to talk to you. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much for that very brilliant presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together for her again. Before we go to the next presentation, it will be right for us to invite to give us a fatherly blessing the Malaba of Crown Brass, His Majesty Alfred J.T. Smith. It's not all the time we have the caliber of His Royal Majesties that come for our programs. So when we find one, we make use of that. Thank you, sir.
Our host, the Acting Managing Director of NDDC, our partners, Your Majesties, Excellencies, we have been called upon to form partnerships. United we stand, divided we fall. Let us pool our resources together, speak with one voice, and look at each other and learn to love each other. The Niger Delta should look at each other and don't look at the bad side of your brother or sister. Look at his assets. We as a people need to paddle together. In the Navy we say give way together. Let's work as a team and let's see that we build our region to become the most enviable region in this country. We should be the Kuwait of Nigeria. We should be the area where people are coming for tourism. We should be the area where a lot of heavy industries abound. Which brings me to something we have said a few times before, I don't know, to different audiences. We have a design of a non-combustion engine. An engine that does not run on fuel. An engine that does not give any emission, is very friendly to the atmosphere. An engine that will produce 8 to 10 times the torque of other engines its size. We are also working hard towards getting a Formula 1 racing track. We are looking at the Ogoni area, not just cleaning up the mess, but also bringing something positive. With the Formula 1 racing track here, all the motor manufacturers and industries will also come in like bees swamping into the honeycomb. We need to think positive. We need to think big. We need to plan big. We have all the opportunity. We are a proud people who know exactly what we want. So let's put our cards on the table. Let's work together as a team and let's see that we become the shining light of the entire nation, not just the treasure base of the nation. We are already the treasure base. But let us work together and show the rest. Let us show that we are made of a sterner stuff. Let us show the world that we can lead for the rest of the country to follow. I'm delighted to be with you today, and all the things that have been put down, if 60% of that is implemented, I think we'll go a long way. And I'm happy that so much interest has been shown from the stakeholders to attend these seminars and workshops. It is very important Please keep in touch. Use all the modern ITC systems that have been put at your disposal, and let us see that we get the Niger Delta moving, even without oil or after oil. Thank you very much.
A fatherly advice indeed. His Majesty will continue to prove true to type. Let's put our hands together for him once more. On restoring livelihoods, a collective responsibility is Ford Foundation. Ladies and gentlemen, join me to welcome Professor Paul Nwolo of the Ford Foundation to speak to the House. Let's put our hands together as he comes. The last 10 minutes. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. The acting MD of NDDC, I beg to stand on existing protocols. My name is Paul Nwolo. I work with the Ford Foundation, where I manage the Creativity and Free Expression Initiative in the West African office of the Ford Foundation. The Ford Foundation is an international development partner that supports work in different areas of the world. Our office in Lagos manages work across the West African region. And part of what we do is to look for innovative agencies that we can be able to work with to promote our work and to promote the goals that we seek to accomplish. And one of these agencies is the Niger Delta Development Corporation. And we are very proud to be a partner of NDDC because we know that working with NDDC and collaborating with NDDC, we can be able